Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October webinar, looking at how we might use insight from the Women's World Cup to develop core skills and moves with our players. We've got a lot to get through in 75 minutes, but our first theme is going to focus on why are our FA core skills and core moves so important. Theme 2, we're going to look at how can we utilise data insight on core moves from the Women's World Cup. And theme 3, we're going to look at how can we observe factors that impact the effectiveness of core skills and core moves.
Yeah, I think just some considerations for you guys who have joined us this evening, just how you can make this relatable to you in your own environment that you coach in. So just consider the various game formats that you may well be using. Consider your club's philosophy, consider your own coaching philosophy, your own playing philosophy, your players, most importantly, how this can relate to them as individuals. Also then the off-pitch stuff around your session planning considerations with what you're seeing this evening, how that reflects in your pitch design and your pitch geography, so that area on the pitch that you're going to set up and see these core moves happen. And then also just considerations around your expectations of your individual players' capabilities. Just think about that. Also allowing the mistakes to happen, because some of the stuff that you're going to see this evening, your players may not nail it straight away, but they will take some time. So just consider those mistakes that might happen. And then also just really exciting, creating that exciting footballer that hopefully that's what we're all here to achieve, those future lionesses.
When we think about them, it's about the individual and about what can the individual do in terms of their skill. So if on the left-hand side, you've got in possession. So you've got finishing, moving with the ball, receiving, passing, turning. And then the right-hand side, we've got the out of possession core skills as well. And I guess the importance is around how do we look to develop these individual core skills with our players to support them in becoming more skillful players. And I guess it's starting to recognise, and we'll go through an observation tool that you can use around the 6 capabilities. It's starting to look at our individual players and where are they at with these things to give us some super strengths that they might have, but also then some areas of development where we might then be able to really tailor some specific individual stuff to support them in becoming a more kind of skillful player linked to the core skills. And I think it's really important to highlight as well, we all love to coach attacking and the skillful art of defending. So it's not neglecting that and spending a good amount of time with our players as well around developing their out of possession core skills.
And while it's playing, Nimesh, I'll just come to you. What are you seeing? So we've got 3 clips here. We've got youth here. We've got female game, and we've got male game as well. What are your observations?
Yeah, I think for coaches, yeah, especially those foundation phase and youth development phase coaches, it might be just maybe looking at a small area. So maybe looking at what 1 or 2 players are doing in the clip, rather than maybe trying to have a focus on the whole image you're seeing, but maybe have a look at the player that's on the ball and the one that they connect with, and think about the type of movement that's actually been created. So some of you in the chat box have been stating some of the different core moves already before we've looked at them. So it might be little wall passes or types of pass, which then linked to another player. So here you can really see them again, obviously in full-time real play, but an opportunity to have a look at those small areas of the pitch where 1 or 2 players can actually create something like a goal scoring opportunity.
Really quickly here, it's just, here are the 2-player core moves. So we have 6. So what I've done there, it's a nice little graphic of what it looks like and a little description for you. So obviously here you've got your diagonal pass, straight run, your straight pass, diagonal run, your overlap, pass and follow, take over, and wall pass. And then 3-player core moves. So now you're bringing in an extra mate. So it's not just you on your own, which is your core skills. It's not just you now in a 2 with your 2-player core moves. It's you as a 3. So you've got your lending pass, your round the corner, your set back pass, your 3 in a line, and your up, back, and through.
The slide you can currently see now on the screen just sort of showcases some of the different practice types and how these are really closely linked to the step principle and how you can bring out some of these core moves in the practices you're doing with your players. So we mentioned, and I think Lisa and Tash mentioned around, it's really important that you come back to your context through every slide that you see. So here, if you have a look there on the top left, you've got unopposed practices. So that might be where, if you've never seen some of these 2 or 3 player core moves, or if you might have seen some of the 2-player ones, or maybe not some of the 3-player core moves, an opportunity to maybe try them in an unopposed setting and get your players to have a real feel of what they're like and what they actually look like, because your players may not know what they are at this stage. So those of you that may be working in a 5v5 setting that might have a formation in grassroots of like a 1-2-1 or a 2-2, it's a great opportunity for you to showcase some of those straight pass diagonal runs and those diagonal passes for straight runs within those shapes and formations that you choose to play at the grassroots level. But what we ideally want you to try and work on is actually provide your players with game realistic solutions. So as you move across to the right here, you've got unopposed and interference. So that's where you might now take that practice that you just tried, that 2 or 3 player combination without anyone in the way to get your players used to it, but then actually get some of the players in the way, because that's what players face on a game day. And we all see on grassroots, and I go and watch my niece and nephew play on a Sunday morning, and all the kids just swarm a certain area of the pitch. And that's what grassroots football looks like. It is literally sometimes everyone around the ball. And sometimes it's then how do we actually find the purpose of actually that interference and understanding where those patterns take place. Again, that gives you an opportunity to try and support the repetition of the technique that's taking place, which links to the core skills. And then actually, can we actually move our players to utilizing overloads and underloads, which we see happen in the game? So all of those clips that you saw there, that you saw in the videos, you saw some underloads and overloads when the core moves were taking place. So a great opportunity again for you to try and utilize those. And then can we get as close as possible to matched up scenarios, which is what our players face. And I think just to finish here, I think it's really important that when we think about the areas of training space we have, so you might be sat there thinking, actually, well, I've only got a third of a pitch. How am I really going to try and maybe plan some of these practices? So what you actually might do is you might actually have small areas of the pitch and 2v2s and 3v3s set up. But by simply changing an element of that step principle, you can get different returns out. So if we think about the size of an area, if we have a really short pitch, but it's really wide in an example, there's an opportunity to maybe get some of those give and goes or wall passes. But if you wanted to try and bring out some of those passes, which were 2-player combinations, such as a straight pass for a diagonal run or a diagonal pass for a straight one, you may need to change your area size to give your players the actual dimensions to support them being able to practice some of those core moves.
We've already spoken about this as top level of the game. So I'm not really here looking for you to look at the data and the numbers and the percentages. I want you guys to think about how you can go and have a think of how you could use these in your own environments. So I just thought I'd spend a minute just explaining as a game insights analyst what we look to do. So we take very large data sets. So we could either use a third-party provider. So I'm sure all of you have heard of Opta. So we could use Opta, Stats Perform, Y-Scout to generate our data. Or we could do things manually, which is how we do quite, some of our work if it's more bespoke. So a study like this that we've done around core skills and core moves is very bespoke to us at the FA. So we have massive data sets. And then we've kind of got to somehow look at the data sets and then try and zoom in, because some of the data is useless and we don't need it, but it's so big. And Dan in the background's favourite tagline is one of my favourite things is if you try to see too much, you see nothing. So what we do is we kind of look at that information and we look at what's interesting, what are we going after, and what do we want to discover more about, because sometimes that actually impacts what we do look at. And then what we can do is we can shine a lens on the core insight that comes out. So I'm going to share with you some slides that we have generated, which will be used hopefully across courses. Obviously, we're using it on this webinar tonight. And hopefully, this could start some conversations for all of you when you're talking to your players or other coaches that you work with. Or if you do have a coach developer, be honest and open and have some conversations about some of this insight. So I want to just start with some headlines. I think that's really, really important because we have to start with something before we then zoom our lens in even further. So as I said, we were zooming in on goal scoring. So there was 164 goals scored at the tournament, and 66% of these, which is 109 goals, were scored from open play. So the other 34%, they're your set plays, your corners, your free kicks, your penalties. 84% featured at least one core move in the build-up, in the lead-up to the goal being scored. So what we're doing here, we've asked you earlier, why are our, FA core skills and core moves so important? What shows it here? It's so frequent, it's so prevalent, they happen all the time. So how do we, turn them from a strength into a super strength? Or if it's something that we're not too good at, but we want to get better at, how do we improve? Want to flag, 75% of all open play goals contained at least one 2-player core move in the build-up to the goal being scored. And 41% had at least 3 players.
If we just have a focus in on actually a couple of players on how something's scored and we break it down, they all actually come from some of these core moves, apart from if someone is making a solo run. And I think the key bit there for me that's been really identified is around how you mentioned that it can sometimes be more than one core move that leads up to a goal. So it might be like a wall pass that then leads into a diagonal pass for a straight run, which then scores a goal. And I think that's what coaches in here can take away, is that when they look at how they may do a task and say, actually, let's have a look at our next game or our next training session. How are some of the goals scored? And they might see a couple of these different core moves being used, and it might be a couple of players or it might be 2 or 3 players. And I think it's really, really prevalent for them to maybe just have a look and think, actually, it might not be in solo or in just one core move. It might be 1 or 2 of them joined together.
So is it what you thought? Diagonal pass straight run equates for 4 in 10 of all core move goals. Straight pass diagonal run is 15%. Pass and follow 3%. Wall pass 2%. And takeover and overlap 1% each. So what we're saying here isn't that a wall pass never happens. It does happen. It just probably isn't in the lead up to a goal being scored. And again, we have to remember this is just insight from the tournament. So within your own environments, you might have players that are fantastic at wall passes and brilliant at enticing a defender and then going running on the blind side of them. So we're not saying here that you need to now go and just solely work on diagonal pass straight run. That's not what we're saying you need to do. We're saying this is what the insight is. What is it like in your environment? So I want to be really crystal clear on that. Quite a lot of people talking about the lending pass, and someone I think actually said it has to be the lending pass. Danielle Evans, got to be the lending surely. Absolutely, it is. And I think the reason why it might have more involvement in goals, a couple of people having a discussion and saying they're not actually really sure what a lending pass is. But it's basically if I say, I pass it to Lisa, she passes it back to me, it obviously shifts the opposition and we entice them in towards us. And then I find Tash out the other side and we've brought all of their players over to our side. It's opened up that little gap for Tash. So they might have been overloading us that area where we are because we're keeping it between me and Lisa. And then I find Tash on a bigger switch. Doesn't have to be a bigger switch. But something that we did find is that lending passes don't really penetrate. All they do is they maintain possession. They shift opposition. Whereas you're round the corner, that clip we saw of Ellen White very much did break a line. It did penetrate, but they don't happen as often within the game or in the lead up to goal scoring. But when they do happen, they look brilliant. When it comes off, it's fantastic. But I've been doing a few round the corner moves. I actually did one last night with my own players. I did, there was 3 stations. The first station they were working on around the corner for 4 minutes as a rotation, as a carousel. The second one, they were looking at an up, back and through. And then the third pattern was an overlap into a diagonal pass straight run. And the amount of round the corners, because it's off of one touch, was really hard. And it was unopposed. I had mannequins. That's all I had. So the player had to come off the mannequin to play it round the corner. And the amount of my players, senior players, that really, really struggled to get the whip on that pass. Because if it's fizzed into you, it's quite hard as well to kind of keep the pace of the ball and get it into your teammate. So certain ones maybe are easier to work with, especially with younger players. A lending pass might be easier because it is maybe more so unopposed and you're not looking to break a line. You are just looking to keep it between you and then get it out to your mate the other side. As well, the nut back and through, that's a really technical one because it's got to be a really strong pass into, you think positionally it might be your number 4 playing it into your 9, who then sets back and then you're getting it on the one in behind. So obviously people call it a third man run as well. Now when that happens, fantastic. But to get the detail and the technique, so when we're talking about the core skills that would be involved in a move like that, it is a really tough one to do. And then from Rachel around, how can you bring it in without overloading it and making, I guess, too much information for the players? So how do you make it engaging? How do you make it fun? and how do you make it so it's not overloading the players? So I'm just coming to you because obviously with the experiences you must have with working with the age group of players that you have and in all your previous experiences, how would you keep it fun?
Yeah, I think there's a couple bits in there. I think the language bit's key because we've all got different sayings around what a lem pass is or a wall pass is or a 1-2 is, and there's lots in the chat box. I think it's around giving consistent messages to players. I think that's the most important thing. And then it might just be that you just look at one. So you might just look at one in a session, and then you might have a reward system in a game, and when they bring that out, it might be that you have a carousel approach, they get to have a go, but we're just trying to build those pictures and build the confidence in the player and get them to understand how to do these things. And I think the important thing is yes, we need to work on the 2 and 3 player core moves, but actually some of the other bits, and we'll look at that in a minute, around kind of the core skills, around enticing people in to then make a setback pass, for example, to then create the space to play forward, I think is really crucial. So I think it's just about exposure to the language, exposure to what that means, what do the pictures look like, and you can do that through carousels, or you can do that and just introduce one until they've got it and then move on to the next one, because we've got these players hopefully for a period of time, so we can just start building that up for them.
I'd look, well, probably across the board, actually, across all game formats. I'd consider small-sided game. What does my pitch design look like? Do I have channels? Do I have thirds? Am I going to be putting players in safe zones to allow this to happen? Am I going to utilise a points reward system when this happens as well? Safe zones can be players dropping in with no pressure. So you're already practicing those receiving skills and maybe a little setback without any pressure. It might be that you split the pitch into thirds. Now you're starting to consider a lending pass and then a switch in play. It might be that you have pitches into thirds. Then you're going to start considering a little up, back and through to go through the thirds as well. But in all the practices that I put on, I'll always have goals. There will always be a goal outcome. It might be a small goal. It might be 7v7, 9v9 or 11v11 size goal. There'll always be a goal because generally senior gamers always goalkeepers. So we can always incorporate goalkeepers within all of our practices and within all of our core moves as well and our core skills.
Nimesh, you spoke earlier around swarming the ball. And I think what that number 10 does for Man City there, as Tash said, she holds her position, she keeps that width. The issue then if she goes too central, makes it too easy for that Sheffield United defender. If I just pause it there, you look at the deepest Sheffield United player, she's got a bit of a decision to make. She's got to stay central enough. So she's obviously not too far to the right, not too far to the left, because otherwise that opens a massive gap centrally. But she's also got to be a good enough distance that she can get across to the number 10, which is quite a hard skill to have at this young age, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think Tash mentioned it earlier in the start of the webinar around, being skillful out of possession. So I think their player has a decision on when to go. And I think it's a lot about momentum and the acceleration and the ability to then de-accelerate to try and get back. Sometimes those wall passes are perfectly timed and it's very hard to try and defend against. So it actually maybe, can I make then a recovery run and what's my de-acceleration like to get back in? But there, if we look at on the ball and around the ball, as the player there who was the deepest player for Sheffield there goes in, it's then the relationship with the players around the ball and away, actually, as that player goes in, who else can actually cover and drop round to actually, if I am beaten, someone else can try and catch up and stop the player from getting a shot on.
Yeah, I think it's just around the right areas of the pitch. So it might just be that you pick an area of the pitch where it would happen, and then it's how would you scale that then into that section of the pitch. So again, it goes back to that pitch geography, which Lisa mentioned earlier, around how do we create that pitch geography that's relevant then for the players.
Yeah, brilliant.
And just Katie, to add on there, I know Lisa's just put in the chat around you might have a system or utilizing the zone. So some of you might be in the chat and you only get the third on a 3G pitch and you've got the middle third. You might not get a big goal. So you might have to have an end zone. So it might be actually you're working in a certain area. We haven't got a goal in our training session, but we have got somewhere where we can put or mark out with some flat disc or some cones an area that we actually want to get into. And we may get double points or extra points if we get the ball into there.
Just the timing of that pass as well, the timing of the movement to stay on side, the timing of the movement to drop in to the front shoulder there, and then the movement off of the back shoulder into the front shoulder. So if we're looking through the 6 capabilities, we've got the scanning in there, we've got positioning in there, we've got our movement, we've got execution of technique, finishing execution in there as well as the passing technique. The timing of the movement, the timing of the runs, the timing of the pass detail, what foot we pass into for our players to be able to combine like that off of the one touch, the weight of the pass, the accuracy of the pass, for players to move on to the ball.
Yeah, for me, I think sometimes as grassroots coaches, it can be, it can go on a webinar and it could be quite daunting to think, actually, I've got to now try and implement all of those 2-player core moves, all of those 3-player core moves, the 6 capabilities. It might just be just 2 of those 6 capabilities I'm going to have a look at in my next practice and just have a focus on those, or those 2 and 3-player core moves. I'm just going to pick one each in my next session, and I'm going to have a look at that. And all of those other core moves might come out in the session, but actually I'm just going to have a focus or offer a reward system or a point system on 1 or 2 that might we then link to a game. So for me personally as well, that might be something that I take into my own coaching. Rather than trying to look at absolutely everything, I'm going to really narrow it down and just have a look at a couple of those core moves.